for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And tonight I am supposed to be talking to Andrea Matthews, the author of Inhabiting Heaven Now. However, we seem to have, we seem to be crossing paths or something. The truth of the matter is, I haven't been able to reach her. I don't know if something happened. She's away from her phone, not able to make it, or maybe we had a time zone mix-up, or what. I'll try again in a couple of minutes, but we're not making contact right now. So I'm not exactly sure if we're even going to have a full show tonight, but I thought I'd let everybody know what was going on. In fact, let me give it a try right now. Well, it helped to copy and paste her number back into my clipboard. I'll try the original one she gave me first. Oh. Hello, Royce. Wake up. Cross your fingers.
This is Andrea.
Hello, Andrea. This is Royce. Pardon me, Talk Now Radio.
Hi.
And we are already live on the air, just to let you know. I tried to contact you a few minutes before the show and got your answering machine, so maybe I didn't time it quite right.
I apologize. That was my error. I was not paying attention. Please forgive me.
That's okay. These kind of things happen. At any rate, now that we are here together, we can talk about your book, Inhabiting Heaven Now. And I haven't actually read the book yet myself, but I am familiar with the subject of heaven, and I do know that I myself have often thought that when you live a godly life and you let, Jesus into your heart and you live the way that you'd want him to, if everybody did it, you could be bringing heaven to earth right now.
Yeah, I think that's close. I think that at least close in terms of what I was saying in my book. Basically, what the book is really telling us is that some of our traditional understanding of what it means to be in heaven isn't really true.
Right, because most people are looking to have a big old place up in the sky, and and some people are looking for it in another dimension, and some people are looking in it for in another thought dimension, and I think it's not a lot of clarity on that right now. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I would agree. I think that we're not sure at all about what heaven is, and what I've done with the book is try to look into the root language that is behind the language that has been selected by the people who translated the texts. Was selected from the perspective that they had at the time. And what I say in the book is that perspective is the duality trance state that we all live in which we think that we're separate from the divine. But actually, we're not separate at all. We are one with the divine. And the mistake isn't in the fact that we're terrible people and that we've sinned against God. The mistake is in the fact that we think that we're not divine, and so we act like terrible people. And we believe that that's true about us. And that's actually the lie. The truth is that you are one with the divine. As Jesus said, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. He didn't say you can get to be that. He didn't say you can grow to be that. He said you are that. And he was talking to the masses when he said that. So he was talking to a bunch of sinners.
Right.
And, so the idea is that we've kind of misinterpreted what that means because we haven't really looked into the root language, and what the root language says is something very different.
That's interesting you should say that because, for one thing, when I was going to church, I left church years ago, but when I did go, one of the things that came up in the pulpit from time to time was the fact that one of the biggest sins there really is the illusion that there's separation between us and God. In other words, that we're not really separated. And another thing that has come up is what you were just saying about going back to the original language. In Sunday school, a preacher's wife once taught that the Greeks had some 100 different words for the word love, so that they could break down one word for brotherly love, another one for like the love between a mother and a son or a mother and a daughter, and they had it all stretched out where you could get a much better understanding and know exactly which one you was talking about. And, you know, the same could be true because a lot of the New Testament is written in Greek to begin with.
Yeah. The New Testament, yes, and the Old Testament is written in ancient Hebrew, which is a little bit different than the Hebrew we understand today. And not only that, but when we're looking at it from the viewpoint of people who already believe that they're separate from the divine, then we're going to interpret accordingly. So our interpretations, like, for example, when we look at the word knowledge and the word in the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what we've thought that meant was that we had the choice to sin or stay, you know, as good people with God. But actually what it was talking about was the word knowledge there means to reveal yourself to yourself. And so when we look at it from that perspective, the tree of knowledge was an essential part of our journey to really come to know ourselves in form as divine beings. Before that, there had been no form. There was only formlessness. And the divine was a part of that formlessness, was constituent to that formlessness. And so formlessness created form, and when form became form, it was like, well, am I different from formlessness now? And if so, what does that mean about me? What's the nature of form? And so we began to determine that we were separate from the divine. And that moment, that metaphorical moment, it's not a literal moment, but a metaphorical moment where we ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what we did was incorporate into the body-mind the belief that we're separate from the divine. But that was a part of the journey because we had to ask the question, am I separate from the divine? In order to answer the question, no, I'm not separate from the divine. And so that's the journey we've been on ever since. And it looks, when we look at it from the perspective of good and evil, it looks like a really hard journey where we're doing a lot of really stupid stuff. But the truth is that all of that is part of believing that we're separate from the divine. And as long as we keep believing that we're separate from the divine, we're going to act as if we're separate from the divine. In fact, one of the things that the book talks about, the book is Inhabiting Heaven Now, one of the things it talks about is that our definition of Satan and the devil is also askew because it says the real definition is more like he is the accuser. It's not a he, it's a mental construct that is the accuser. And what it accuses us of is not being divine.
Well, I heard he was also considered the accuser and the adversary, but you know, an adversary is not necessarily an enemy.
Right, and the adversary can be somebody who stops us from doing something that we don't need to do, exactly. But it is adversarial to be telling us that we aren't divine, that we aren't who we are. So that, you know, it sort of stops us from believing that we are who we are, and it's just a part of us that accuses us of not being who we actually are. And now, that's the great divide.
Okay. Now, I didn't mean to step on you there for a minute, and I was going to say, though, I kind of got the show off on the wrong foot calling you at the last minute or reaching you at the last minute, and I didn't get my usual start off here. And while I'm thinking about it before I forget, real quick, let me remind everybody that your book is Inhabiting Heaven Now. If they want to learn more about you and maybe other books you either have written or are going to write, they can go to www.andreamatthewslpc.com. You can also scroll down below the chat room where her promo is. You'll see the title. You'll see her picture, the book cover. You'll also see a link below all of that to the actual book itself on Amazon. If anybody wants to ask questions, you can either do so in the chat room or you can call 832-632-7904. And having said that, I also usually like to start off a show by having my guests introduce themselves, or, well, I say introduce, I mean tell them a little something about yourself and, you know, what brought you to the interest of writing this particular material.
Yeah, that's a great question. I started off many years ago as a very what's the word I want to use? Not really fundamentalist, but very certain of what I believed in terms of a Christian faith. And as time went by, I realized more and more that that was not enough for me. I needed to know more about my real connection to a peaceful beingness that I could understand as divine. And I wouldn't have put it that way in my search then, but now looking back, I can certainly see that. And over the years, I've had several experiences, and some of them miraculous, some of them just ordinary, where I really came to understand through meditation and through the power of living and growing and being open to the idea that there is no separation between the divine and humanity. We've just made that up. And so out of that came the first book, which was called Restoring My Soul, which was a pathway to the authentic self. And the second one is The Law of Attraction, the soul's answer to why it isn't working and how it can. And that one was all about how it is. There's been so many people out there saying that we can have anything we want if we just think correctly. And I don't agree with that. I think that we are on a journey to discover who we are. And so the real law of attraction is we're attracted to and by all those things, people, places, events, and circumstances that will bring us to full awareness of who we are as divine beings. And then, of course, out of that came Inhabiting Heaven Now, the answer to every moral dilemma ever posed. Because I think we've gotten so lost in morality and in good and evil that we've forgotten who we actually are. We're so busy trying to do the right thing or trying to do the wrong thing or rebel against the right thing that that's become the only thing there is, and we feel hopeless and despairing of ever being able to move beyond that paradigm. And that's why I think this book is so necessary, because it moves us beyond that paradigm and into true spirituality, which is what Jesus was talking about when he said that all men would come to worship him in spirit and in truth.
Yeah, and I think it would really be pretty necessary because, there's become such a vast array of religions over the millennia that who would really know how to find God in any one given one of them, and they're all so different.
Absolutely. Yeah, the thing that is the same throughout these religions is when someone has an experience of connection with the divine, the experiences are exactly the same regardless of religion. They have, a heightened sense of self, a heightened sense of connection to something bigger than themselves, a powerful, peaceful feeling, maybe even exuberant, euphoric, joyful feeling. Also, insights come flooding in that have never been there before, insights that just seem so grounding and so real. And all those experiences are the things that people experience when they've had an encounter with the divine, regardless of whether they're Buddhist or Hindu or Jainist or Christian or, whatever.
Yeah, and I've heard that before too. I've heard quite a few things like people that have OBs or astral projections sometimes experience the same thing. So it's not just whether you're in church or really any one given place or anyone doing any one given thing, in other words.
Absolutely, I agree. The divine is that force within us that is always, very powerfully acting to make us aware of the grace that is always there. And we sort of fall in and out of it sometimes without even knowing that we've done it. And the key is to be able to turn around and look and go, oh, that was real. And to honor that experience and take with it the gifts that it has to give us. We very often don't do that. I mean, even if something that we might consider as ordinary as a sunset can be a very powerful divine experience if we're open to it. Just breathing in and out can be a very powerful divine experience if we're open to it. The problem is that we're generally closed to it.
Actually, you ever have anybody with severe emphysema or anything like that? They become a whole lot more open to the awareness of how divine their next breath is.
Yeah, absolutely. Near-death experiences and illnesses and painful experiences and joyful experiences. Yes, all of those things are opportunities for us to wake up.
Although some of the opportunities we would rather not wake up that way. I mean, kind of like, would you rather get woke up by a gentle nudge or by ice water pouring on your head?
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And I do think we have some choice in that, in that to the degree that we have insight, we have the ability to kind of step that up by putting into practice some things that will keep us open.
Right.
Meditation is definitely one of those. Prayer is another. Just being attuned to the moment that Nhat Hanh talks about, the walking meditation where you're just constantly aware of what's going on in the next step, and the next step, and the next step. And what that means is just staying open, and it's being open that allows us to become more open.
Okay. Now, real quick, before I forget, why don't you tell everybody a little something about your book, kind of give them a summary of what they can expect to find in there without actually, giving the whole entire candy store away, so to speak.
Okay. The name of the book is Inhabiting Heaven Now. And it offers to move us from the duality trance state, which is about living into right and wrong or good or bad, and moving toward our worthiness coming from our essential beingness, not from our actions, not from our words. Not that we won't have right action when we are living in our essential beingness, but rather that we won't be looking to right action to be the thing that's going to get us there. So what it does basically is it takes the sacred text of the Jewish Tanakh and the Christian Old Testament, and it looks at this original story of the Garden of Eden, and it explains how we got into the duality trance state from that metaphor. And then it takes some texts that Jesus used in his sermons, particularly the one on the Sermon on the Mount, and it utilizes that information to clarify that Jesus was actually telling us who we are as divine beings. So when you read the book, what it does is sort of slowly open the door to the mind to allow us to consider the possibility that what we've always believed to be true about ourselves is utterly false, and what we've always believed to be utterly false is absolutely true.
That's kind of like a diametrically opposed puzzle there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because we've always been taught that we're separate from the divine, that we're limited and that we're bad, and that it's because of us that there's all the problems on the world and all that. And that the world is going to end in a bang and not a whimper. And so we're just living in this sort of despair that says, well, this is how it is, and we hope that maybe we'll get good enough one day to win the big battle between good and evil. But there's not much hope for that, because look around. I mean, look at us. We're not really going to make that happen because we're just basically bad people. That's what we've all believed on to some degree or another. But that is the lie. What the truth is that we're divine beings, and we're here to finish the creative process that started when Elohim brought form from formlessness. And when we have finished that journey, what will happen is that we will understand the body as a part of the divine, as well as the mind and the spirit.
I think that the church, especially the early church, had a lot to do with this kind of, form of thinking. I mean, like I say, I used to teach Sunday school. My dad was a Pentecostal preacher, so I've been really well introduced and heard a lot from inside the pulpit in the Sunday school. And a thing that gets repeated a lot, especially in Pentecostal churches, is how our righteousness is as filthy rags, that nobody could ever be as good as Jesus, and there is no way to ever be righteous, and, we just have to be forgiven just the way we are. And with that kind of a message, why does anybody need to improve? They're not going to succeed anyway.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that word righteousness, because when I did the research into the root language of that word, as Jesus used it in the Sermon on the Mount, the word actually means, that its root meaning is, it means only Christ truly. So basically what that's saying is, at the bottom and the core of who we are only Christ truly. We are only Buddha truly. We are only Krishna truly. We are only God truly. We are only the divine. And that's all we are. That's all we've ever been. We just don't know it. And righteousness, when Jesus says your righteousness should exceed that of the Pharisees, what he's really saying is your essential beingness is the truth of who you are. Your godness, your divineness is who you are. And because that's there, you can trust it to create right living for you. And you don't have to force yourself to do that by trying to behave correctly. It will behave correctly just because it is divine if we surrender to it.
So a lot of people who don't behave any better, I mean, let's just say the criminal element don't even try. Some of them never even heard of God, don't even understand a lot of this. But then you got your other role of people that, well, we're just good people, but we don't believe in church. But yet we can't seem to overcome our negativity. Then you got the people in church who are supposed to be more righteous and holy because they are in church, but yet they believe they can't overcome this. And again, all of this really, the only hindrance they have then, according to what you're saying here, is their own faulty belief. If they would just but have a belief that they could and have faith in the part of them that is divine, then they would find that they could master what they wanted to, only they don't believe they can. They kind of stop themselves, in other words.
Yes, you got it. That's it. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah, that is the truth is that we're about, what you just said. Well, these people are going to church. Well, they're supposed to be righteous, and these other people, they're in jail. They're not supposed to be righteous. But the idea is that there's this split off between the good guys and the bad guys, and the good guys are always trying to do good, and the bad guys are always trying to do bad. But when we look at the reality, that's never true. I mean, you just said it. The people that are in the church are very often hypocritical and doing a lot of kinds of things in secret that a person who's a criminal would do out in the open. So, and in the same way, a criminal, and I used to go to prisons to do interviews for drug and alcohol assessment back in the early days of my career when I was a counselor. And I'd have these guys say to me, you need to back away from me. I'm a bad dude. And I would watch them literally hide to do something good. If they wanted to give a gift that one of the other inmates' children brought them or something, they would go hide to do it. So they didn't want anybody to think of them as good because they had identified as, I'm a bad guy, and that's how they saw themselves as being alive. So we're all looking when we're little for some kind of identification to say, this is how I'll live.
You think maybe a lot of it is they're also afraid that if the other prisoners saw them, they would consider it a weakness and they'd become a target?
Yes, I think that's that too, but I think that they were doing this before they ever got in there. I think they were doing that on the street, and if you talk to them for any length of time, you find that they are. They've identified as, I'm a bad guy. And what happens when we're growing up is we're always looking for a mirror to tell us who we are. If I, for example, and this is just one of many, but if I grow up in a home where it's like this hyper-religious home where every little thing I do is expected for its goodness or its badness, and I get criticized frequently for my badness and not noticed much for my goodness, well, I'm probably going to grow up believing that the only way that I can really be alive in anybody's eyes is to be bad. So what am I going to have to do?
I can actually testify that you're right from personal experience. I had a rough upbringing as a child, and, taking me to the doctor, they diagnosed me as ADHD, hyperactivity disorder, and stuck me on Ritalin, and they told my dad that I'd never be able to control my temper unless I stayed on my medication. And, of course, naturally, you sometimes miss doses in that. And every time I did fly off the handle, I could hear my dad telling people there's nothing he can do about it. He can't help it. He missed his medicine. Hang on a minute. We got a caller. I'm going to interrupt that thought before we lose the caller.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air.
Oh, hello, Royce. And hello, Andrea.
Hello.
I just had a question. I've been listening, and I had a question. Well, first, let me give a little background and then ask the question. I'm 32 or 33, one of the two. I got old enough I stopped paying attention to my birthday, so I'm not sure if I'm 32 or 33. But I've noticed that as my life has progressed, that I've kind of evolved, like, mentally and spiritually. When I was younger, I was pretty stupid. I'll admit that. But I just wonder, I seem to be evolving both mentally and spiritually, but there's other people my age that are not as mature or evolved. And I was wondering if you could tell people your thoughts on why some people seem to just like why some people evolve like mentally and spiritually, and other people just kind of get stuck in like a teenage mentality or whatever, for their whole lives. I was wondering if you could touch on that and give your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think part of it is identity. We were just starting to launch into that. The idea is that we're looking for somebody to tell us who we are. And if we grow up in a home that reinforces a certain belief about who we are, we live into that belief. And so if I identify strongly as an adolescent, then, this is just one example, but if I identify strongly as an adolescent, for example, if I was very popular during adolescence and then I go off into college and I'm small fish in a big pond, I might still hold on to that old identity and try to live into it and try to make it work for me because I think it's how I'm going to survive and how I'm going to keep myself from feeling sad about life. And so I'm going to keep living into that, and I'm going to do a lot of things from that adolescent mentality that aren't mature and that aren't very attractive to other people, and I'm going to wonder how I've gotten myself into a lonely place. But that then offers me the opportunity to move out of that old identity. So I get into the lonely spot, and that sadness makes me look at myself and reconsider, maybe I need to be doing something different. Maybe I need to grow up a little bit, and that's how my identity might change. So even when we get ourselves sort of boxed into an identity, we can, because it eventually boxes us in and eventually makes us sad or mad or have a hard time in some way, that is sort of impetus for us to get up out of that box and do something different. But the other thing is, I think that we're all at different levels of readiness, and we're all at different. I think we're all on a different journey, and I don't know what is the best journey for somebody. I heard a wonderful story once about two Buddhist monks watching this guy come into heaven. The guy had been drunk all of his life, and one of the Buddhist monks looks at the other one and he says, "Man, he's going to have to go back and live another bunch of lives because he's got a long way to go." And the other one goes, "Well, no, actually, this was his last life. He only had one more thing to learn, and it was humility, and his alcoholism got him that." So I don't know what somebody else is doing and what wisdom they're gaining from a particular incarnation or a lifetime, but I do know that I can trust the journey to get me there.
Okay, well, thank you. I just kind of wanted to know your thoughts on that because I've kind of been going through a awakening, I guess, over the years. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Back when I was in college in my early 20s, I started learning about the Illuminati and secret history and stuff like that, and mm-hmm. it made me a pretty angry person, and my head was screwed up for quite a while over that stuff. But then I came out of it, and I feel better. I feel better. I'm happier now, and I'm more educated about the way things are, and not the way they're supposed to be, but the way things really are, and everything. And I know so much about history and mythologies and stuff like that, and people my age are not like that. And some people I've met are like 20 years older than me, and they're not like that either. I was just wondering why some people seem to evolve differently than others, Kind of something. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said, it's just something that I'd always wondered, why some people seem to be evolving at a faster rate than other people. Some people seem to be kind of stuck in one mentality, and everybody else is kind of over the years growing up and maturing and things. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I would say that little story I told, a metaphorical story about the drunk guy, I think people probably would have looked at him and said, "Well, he's pretty stuck, he's just doing the same thing over and over again." But we don't know what he came here to get, and what we do, and he won't know that till maybe to the end of his life. But he got, apparently in this, it's obviously a cone, it's a joke, but the idea is that he got what he was supposed to get, which was humility. So I don't know what each person is supposed to get, and I don't know how they're supposed to get it. I know that sometimes even blindness, not literal blindness, but blindness to reality can help us see better. If we go through a period where it's utterly dark, when the light comes, it just is so much brighter. So I don't know what somebody else's journey is about, but I do know
that everybody seems to be on their own one, and I'm really glad that you're waking up and that it seems to be offering you something peaceful.
Yeah, I'm a lot more peaceful now than I was. I've kind of learned to accept the things that I can't change. Kind of goes along with the serenity prayer, I'm not a very religious person, but the individual that wrote the serenity prayer was a very wise person.
Yes, he was.
But anyway,
yes, he was,
thank you very much. I'll let you two get back to your interview or whatever, and I'll be listening.
Thank you for your question. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the question.
Yeah,
thanks for calling in.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, now, what I was going to say real quick, basically, though, is, I grew up getting into fights 3 or 4 times a day, and I never tried to learn anger management. Figured, what's the point? If I get off my meds, I'm just going to fly off the friggin' handle, and I really kind of just relied on the medicine. After I turned 14, my dad couldn't afford to keep sending me to the psychiatrist or get the medicine, so you can imagine where that went. Well, that kind of ruined my life for some 30-odd years of violence that got me into some serious trouble, only for me to learn later on that it never was true to begin with. But it does show what you're talking about, that when you're told that as a child, and children or young ones, like I was at the time, 4 and 5 years old, are very impressionable, and if told the right way, they've got no reason to doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there's a Bruce. I don't know if you've heard of Bruce Lipton or not. He wrote a book called Biology of Belief, and he's just written another one called The Honeymoon Effect. And one of the things he talks about is how we identify as young children. He says when we're little bitty, between the ages of 0 and 2, we're in a delta mind wave state. Then when we get to the age of 2 and move on from 2 to 7, we're in a theta brain state. So what that means is that in those 2 periods of time, we are receiving. We're not able to put out as much as we receive, so we're just sort of receiving. We're imprinting with whatever we're around. So it's like little goslings that imprint to a human. If you're telling me all the time that I'm bad, then I'm bad. I'm going to believe I'm bad. If you're telling me all the time that I have to strive to be good, then I'm going to strive to be good. I know some people who live their entire lives trying so hard to be good because somewhere inside they feel like they're bad, although they've never done anything bad. They're just trying really hard to be good people, and they feel guilty and responsible for people all the time. And they live their lives that way, and it's miserable. But everybody would look at them and say, oh, what a great person they are. But actually, these are miserable people because they're just so worried all the time about doing the wrong thing. And so that came from an identity. And so these identities are huge. So that's why I think it's so important that when we try to talk about God, we try to define God, who the divine is, we look at the terminology that it used to define the essence of the divinity, which is, I am that I am that I am. I am eternally I am, to be eternally. So he's describing beingness. And,
that's what I thought. I mean, I never was able to go back and look up the original word, but if somebody says to me, I am, all that says to me is, I exist.
Exactly.
Period. The end. I exist. And I'm like, maybe that's all that he really meant to say in that passage is, I'm just me. I'm here. I exist. Nothing else. Nothing more.
Well, yeah, actually it goes a little bit further than that in that he's saying I exist to exist. In other words, he's saying I am beingness that is here only to be beingness. I'm not good or bad. I'm not, form or formlessness. I'm beingness that is beingness to be beingness. And that's all it ever is. And so it's the eternal ipseity. And what it basically means is that we have that same beingness within us, only we're trying so hard to do something else. And that's why I think it's so important in Psalms where it says, be still and know that I am God. I don't think it's saying be still to figure out who God is up there in the sky somewhere far away. I think it's saying be still to know that I am, that Andrea Matthews is, that Royce is, that we are God. We are divine. When we're still, when we can stop running around trying to be something, then we become beingness.
Now, see, you hit a key factor that a lot of churches would never let it be heard inside their church without trying to suppress it, and that is, we are God's. Even though Jesus said it in the book of John.
Said it. Yes, he did.
And he also said it in Psalms. But that was like the Christ Spirit speaking through somebody. And of course, that's for those who believe in the pre-existence of the Christ Spirit. I think the Bible clearly teaches that it did pre-exist, and that, Jesus was not the man, the Son of God, even though he was, he was and he wasn't at the same time. It's a allegorical thing going on here. On one level, though, there was a part of him, and the same part that's all of us, that was God, because we're all part of the same body, or the same spiritual body. This is the way I personally understand it. If I'm wrong, well, then let God tell me.
Exactly.
But I often myself personally like to equate it to water, like a big ocean of water. That you can separate into many drops, and you have many individuals, but yet all the same governing body.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so, I agree. All the same constituency. We're all made up of the same exact stuff. So, yeah, but we could separate out into drops, and that yet we can't. We can separate it out into waves, but yet the wave falls back down into the ocean. Yes, there's many ways of looking at that, but it comes down to the same thing. You're right. I had, in all those years that I was very attendant at church, Sunday, Wednesday, and, the following Sunday all day, I never once heard a sermon on, do your scriptures not say that you are God's? That's what Jesus said. Yeah, I've never heard a sermon on that.
No, and I never have either.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to. Yeah, I don't think we're going to until we begin to really see what the root language is trying to tell us, which is why I wrote this book, because I wanted it to reach across the great divide between Christianity and other religions, and really sort of help all of us see that all these religions are saying the exact same thing. Every one of them, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, the Jewish faith, all of them are saying in the root language the very same thing, which is, I am divine beingness.
Now, in your book, do you point out where, this is being said in the different religions? Like, say, maybe quote some of Buddha's sayings and compare it to some of Jesus's, or do you do anything near to that? Yes, the Bhagavad Gita, some of the Sufi sutras, some of the Buddhist sutras. Yes, I do that in the book. Now, Sufi is an interesting thing to mention because some of the Sufis originate in the Muslim faith, or in the Muslim part of the world, and there's a lot of aggression since 9/11 to that part of the world, and a lot of people don't realize that, if you have one bad unit, don't mean everybody in the whole entire country is bad. And, you can ask Tim Wallace Murphy, he'll be the first one to tell you that the Sufi religion coming out of the Muslim era is not anything like the Al-Qaeda, for example, and these are very spiritual people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, each one of the religions has a mystical sect. For the Jewish faith, it's Kabbalism. For the Muslim, it's Sufism. There's a mystical sect of Buddhism. There's more mystical sects of Hinduism. So each one of them has its own sort of mystical sect. And what the mystical part of it is found in the oneness. This book is really about the mystical part of any religion, or any faith, or any path, where you're not looking for a bunch of rules to follow or a group to fit into. Right. You're looking for a way to really connect to the divine, and that's the mystical part of any faith. And I think Christianity has Gnosticism. Gnosticism was definitely one element of that. There's a lot of mystical Christianity going on now in the world where people are, and I think some of the new thoughts sort of sprang out of that as well. Some of the more mystical components of Christianity. I think if you look back through time, I'm pretty sure you would agree with this. What you're talking about really equates to the fact that they had a esoteric, which is your more spiritual, and exoteric, which is your more orthodox teaching, in every religion out there. And pretty much the exoteric or the orthodox was for the profane that they thought could never get the deeper meaning of the spiritual, which they say for the esoteric on the initiation of the mystery end.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be correct?
Yes, absolutely. The esoteric is more, the reason it's called esoteric is because it's more secret. And the reason it's more secret is because the exoteric, or the more externalized versions of religions, have been very much against it because it seemed to threaten the power differential. So if I say that I am divine, then what do I need a church for? And the church needed a populace, so it had to sort of call that heresy. And literally, the people that believed that in that quote-unquote heresy were literally killed during several different times in our history, where blood ran in the streets, where people were just massively murdered in a genocide kind of way because they believed in what the church called heresy. And the heresy was that we are divine beings.
Well, let me ask you this now. Don't you think if there's a good reason why the exoteric religions wanted to suppress things like witchcraft, out-of-body experience, astral projection, ESP in its various forms? I mean, you think they're a danger now, or people are a danger to them now if they know the truth. Can you imagine what it would be if people knew the truth and actually had those kind of powers and they was able to exercise them?
Yeah, they did know it, and they did have those powers. They just hid it.
Yeah, I'm just saying you could never control them. That might be why it took 4,000 years to get control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. And all of that is a result of the duality translate, because, you know, if I didn't believe that I was separate from the divine, then I wouldn't need power over other people. I wouldn't need to believe that the church was the way I was going to survive. I wouldn't need to believe that money or anything else external to me was going to be how I survived. You know, if I would just believe that my I amness would be enough. So, you know, the duality translate is the problem, and I call it a translate because it truly is just like a hypnotic translate, where you might, in a comedic more fashion, see somebody act like a chicken on the stage because they think they're a chicken. Well, we've been acting like we're separate from the divine for centuries because we think we are, but we're not. And that's just the problem. So yes, it's going to be very frightening for people. I mean, I've seen people, even some of the bigger names in the big author that are very well known, be a little bit timid about saying I am divine. And I've heard other people criticize them for saying I am divine. What do they think they are? Who do they think they are? They're some kind of
not God. Who do they think
yeah. Yeah. So really, we're just afraid of that whole terminology. But it is the essence of who we are. And one of the things Marianne Williamson said that I really liked, she said, the thing that we fear most is our own peace. And I think that's so very true. We fear most our own peace because it tells us, that peace, it tells us who we are.
I think there's also a part of, a large part of fear of a lack of control, largely why people feel a strong need to control other people, because they feel like they have to do it to protect themselves, keep themselves from getting hurt.
Yep. Yeah, and that whole thing is still based in duality, where I'm separate from the divine, so I have to do certain things to protect myself. The divine won't protect me. I have to watch out and be careful and tell lies and manipulate and all that kind of stuff just to be okay. And so that's based in survival, whereas if we're in our beingness, there is no survival because there is no death. We don't die. We continue to live, perhaps in a different form, but we continue to live. So, the whole thing always comes back down to, am I living in the duality translate, or am I living in my beingness? And those are the options. Instead of the options being, am I living as a good person or am I living as a bad person, the options are, am I living as who I actually am, or am I pretending to be somebody I'm not?
Another way I would personally look at it, and I mean everybody's different, would be personally, are you, as the Apostle Paul said, walking in the Spirit? Basically, to me, that the understanding of that is, are you following your conscience, the part of you that always wants to stop you from doing something mean or, dishonest, or to me that would be following the Spirit. following the ego would fall under prideful and greedy and, selfish things, in other words, or the works of the flesh. Please pardon me. I have lung issues. I can't help that.
That's okay.
So.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that whole paradigm of sinfulness is what we've passed down.
Okay, now real quick, I'd like to remind everybody once again, if you want to learn more about Andrea Matthews, you can go to www.andreamatthewslpc.com. And that Matthews is spelt with only one T now, by the way. And also, if y'all missed the show here live tonight, I will be posting it in my archives. I will be posting it at YouTube. And I will be posting at least a half-hour segment over at Daily Motion. And I'll be giving her links to all of these, so she might probably put at least one or two of them up on her site if she wants to, or, that depends on what kind of site room she has or what kind of time she has. You can also get to her book right below her picture or description here. I got it linked over at Amazon. You can get it that way. Are there some other places you prefer from to get your book?
They can go on my site and get it. They can link to Amazon. They can go to O-Books, the publisher, and get it at O-Books. That's a site out of Britain. It's just o-books.com. And, any of those places are fine. But Barnes & Noble, any of the online or brick-and-mortar sites, they should have the book. Okay.
Now, before we get out of here, are there any other books you got coming up in the near future or somewhere down the road?
Oh, yeah, I'm always writing a book. I'm working on one right now, but I'm not going to give away that one just yet. But I am working on another one, and so, yes, there should be another one coming up in the next year or so.
Next year or so? So you'll probably want to come back and talk about that.
Bring me back. I'll be happy to come back. That'd be wonderful.
Okay. Now, do you have any forums that you use to meet people, or Facebook page, or groups anywhere, or do you do any workshops or anything of that nature?
Yes, I do. I teach workshops. I will go travel and speak to large and small groups. I have worked with corporate training, offering leadership courses and authentic living as well. And you can go to www.innerwings.com and learn more about my speaking engagements and how you can contract with me for a speaking engagement if you'd like to do that. I'd love to go to your churches and to your groups and to your agencies and help facilitate more awareness. That's what I live to do. So be happy to do that. And that again is innerwings.com. Yes, and if you want to just write to me from AndreaMatthewsLPC.com, you're welcome to do that. I do correspond with people. Also, Psychology Today. I have a blog on Psychology Today. It's called Traversing the Inner Terrain. So you can go there and either look under the blog experts and find my name, or look under the title Traversing the Inner Terrain, and you can learn more about my work there as well. So lots of places where you can connect with me.
Okay, sounds very interesting. I was kind of wondering, do you get positive feedback when you do go to churches with this kind of a message?
Well, it depends on the church, of course. I don't think some churches are not even going to invite me because, the message is not one they want to hear. So, and I totally get that, and I totally respect that. That's perfectly fine with me. But the people that invite me are very open and very receptive and excited to hear it. I think there's a lot of people, like the gentleman who called in earlier tonight, who are in that awakening process and beginning to realize that they are divine beings. And when they hear somebody else say it, they're like, oh, man, I'm on the right path. And they get really excited about it. So, yeah, I get a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, I would imagine that you probably have some luck with the Unitarian churches, and maybe the Presbyterian churches are two of the most open-minded that I've heard of.
Yeah, they're not the only ones. The Quakers, there's several different groups that are very open to this kind of teaching, and I think as time goes by, more and more people are going to become open, because this is an awakening that's going to happen for all of us eventually. That's how I see it anyway.
Okay. Now, is there anything that you'd like to tell my listeners about that perhaps I have not thought to ask about?
No, I think you've done a very good interview. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that you've left out. I would say that if they can implement some kind of practice that involves opening and staying awake on a daily basis, whether it's meditation or walking meditation or just the practice of really watching and observing what's going on in your life inside and out, then it opens you to receive more and more from the divine you are.
Yeah, and if there's anybody out there that, like me, had anger issues, I've gotten a lot better than what I used to be with it, and part of what really helped me is, well, I always tried to do it right when I knew I was about to get angry, but that's not always successful. It only works in a very few cases. But if you're not able to do that, as soon as you calm down, try to honestly take the time to get down and find out why did what happened really tick you off. Because what you're going to find out in the end is that 9 times out of 10 is going to go back to your ego. And once you see how it's triggering your ego, you can prepare yourself and make changes in your mental thought process to where the next time it doesn't trigger you so easily.
Very good, yeah. Yeah, now, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're a therapist, so you might have tried that or heard of somebody that tried it with success. I don't know how many people it worked with, but I know it worked for me, in other words.
Yes, I'm in full. Yes, I am a therapist, and yes, I am in full agreement that what we need to do is really be with our feelings and take the message they have to give us, not try to push them away, because the more we push them away, the more they have to come back out later and evidence themselves to us, because they're trying to get us to go inside and find out what's going on in there.
Yeah,
so,
I think
yes,
that's why.
I agree with that.
I think that's why Toth used to say, "Physician, know thyself." Because
yes.
a part of knowing yourself is, I think, part of getting away from duality back into the single-minded thought with God.
Yeah, I agree. I think we really, that whole process of getting to know ourselves will eventually end up with us knowing not only what we think of as our sort of personality, but also to help us to know who we are as divine beings. Absolutely. It's an ongoing process.
Oh, and I don't want to forget, do you have any other books already out on the market?
Yes, I got 2 other books. One is called Restoring My Soul, and the subtitle is A Workbook for Finding and Living the Authentic Self. And that takes it from both a psychological and a spiritual perspective to try to help people actually work in the pages of the book to try to find out who they are. And then the next book is called The Law of Attraction, The Soul's Answer to Why Isn't It Working and How It Can. That's the one I was talking about a little bit earlier, where people are saying that the law of attraction is something that we can use to just think right and we'll grow rich and things like that. Well, I don't agree with that, and I think that what I've put forth in that book is that we're attracted to and by all those things, people, places, events, and circumstances that are going to bring us closer and closer to full awareness of who we are as divine beings. And then this last one, which is about the interview today, which is Inhabiting Heaven Now, the answer to every moral dilemma ever posed. And that's the one we've been talking about today.
Right. All righty then. One last little thing real quick. Do you have any last-minute thoughts?
Yeah, like I said just a minute ago, I think the thing that I would say to everyone is be fully open as much as possible every day, as many moments of the day as you can. And as you do that, you'll come to know more and more about who you are as divine being.
And when you're talking to somebody or you're with a friend, you get your feelings hurt or something like that, maybe she would probably recommend that you really just sit down and stop and talk to your friend and yourself at the same time. Get to the bottom of why it really is bothering each one of you. You might be surprised what you learn.
Absolutely. You might find out you can use that energy in a whole other way, too.
And you might find out what seems like an impassable mountain has a road cut through it, and you just don't see the path for the brushes in front of the passageway.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So to speak. All righty. Well, I show that we roughly got about 5 minutes left, but I'm not sure if there's anything else that we should cover in this last 4 to 5 minutes. I would like to remind everybody that tomorrow I will be at Revolution Radio, and I will be interviewing Michael Horn. And we're going to talk about the Enoch prophecies, which is really, it's kind of old news, but he's going to kind of give us an update on that. And he's got a new movie coming out, a film called And They Didn't Listen. I'm pretty sure we're going to touch on that too, because it's supposed to be a 2-hour show, and I think Michael knows that. This we misunderstood each other. So please come join us over at Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com. I'm over there every Thursday from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. They have an automatic 2-hour slot. So I had to try to find guests for 2 hours or find 2 guests at a time. But it's usually a pretty well drawn out show. And on top of that, it's got a lot of listeners and a lot of radio hosts over there. People just like myself, they have their own shows and they just host the stream for them. And, you know, good way to meet people. And actually, you may want to come over there, Andrea, because other hosts may hear you and want you on their show, because there is a lot of live people over there. And in fact, probably tomorrow, you and me can talk about a date over there if you're interested, but it may take a month or so, because I think I got April all the way booked. You have to forgive me, but I stay booked pretty much 2 months in advance.
So, that's fine. Let me know.
And also, folks, come back over here and see me this coming Saturday. I'm going to be talking to, well, I had her name just a minute ago. Here it is, Barbara Berger, about her book, Are You Happy Now? I'm not familiar with her book. Personally, I haven't read it. But hey, that's not a requirement to talk to her and learn about it. It sounds like it's going to be interesting. I hope to see everybody there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and cut this here loose. I want to thank everybody for listening. Couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without a guest. And let's face it, if you did nothing but listen, you participated, and I appreciate it. Don't forget to tell your friends about Talk Now. Bring them over here. Give them the link. Help them get signed in so they can get into the chat room. And we'll try to make this chat room grow and get more active. With that, y'all have a good day. We'll hope to see you over at freedomslips.com tomorrow. And I'm going to shut down. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.